Good morning, everybody. My name is Dave Finale, and this is Real Estate Talk, TGIF, episode 355. That is 351 weeks in a row. We keep going, and we will keep going. We've done this broadcast from actually all over the world, actually. So I'm really excited today. I have a friend, a colleague, someone that I completely and totally respect. Not that I don't respect all the other 354 guests, but the point is that we know each other. We work with each other day to day. And this is going to be a great conversation. We have Omar Subhi, who is not only a top producing agent, doing great work and great business, helping a lot of people, but he's also the director of sales at Align. As you can see, Align's behind me. It's in front of me. It's all over because we align. Anyway, Omar, thanks so much for coming today. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, man. So before we start, Nelson, hit the videotape. We know all real estate agents want to acquire clients consistently so that they can grow their business and income for that great lifestyle. This broadcast brings you the best and top people in the industry to support that quest. This is Dave Finale, and I'm here to bring you the Real Estate Skill Builder broadcast, Real Estate Talk TGIF, brought to you by Real Estate Skill Builder and Align, your premier real estate solution. Hello, everybody. As I said, we are here. This is Real Estate Talk TGIF, episode 355, 351 in a row. Really excited. I have had this great opportunity to be with this great team called Align since the beginning of 24. And the one thing that I can tell you is that it's a lot different from when I was a broker owner working in a franchise system, which, was fun in the beginning. And then as time went on, it got a little difficult. And I got to be able to work with great people. And one of the things I can tell you about Align from the top down, from Brett Sikora and also to Omar Subhi, is working with great people that really, really are passionate about what they're doing. And everybody that I work with in this organization is passionate. And Omar Subhi is like top of the line, top of the list to me. Omar, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to read a little bit about you. You're the director of sales at Align, also a top performing real estate agent, as well as Align, one of the top teams at eXp Realty. You have a data-driven approach. You're deeply committed to agent development, and you really believe in the performance metrics, strategic insights, and you help the agents to be more efficient and to help them really grow their businesses. You always focus on optimizing lead conversion, refining the sales process, systems and processes, using proven strategies, and really going forward on that. And one of the things I said to you the other day is there's this thing called multitasking. I'm not a believer that anybody can multitask because it's doing like 3 or 4 or 5 different things really poorly, right? I believe there's anyone in this world that can multitask in a perfect way, it's you, because I've seen you do it, right? And it to me, it's impressive. Not that I want to learn how to do it. I've tried to do it and I suck at it, as most people do. And that's not a bad thing. But as we get started here, we're going to talk about that a little bit. But I also want to ask you this most important question that I ask everybody when we start the broadcast. What does TGIF stand for?
Thank God it's Friday.
You're really close, man. And, too bad you didn't get it. But most people don't. Thank God it's finale. So here we are.
Even better. Now every time I see TGIF, thank God it's finale. That's a new one I'm going with.
It is. And when I first named the broadcast almost 7 years ago, I didn't put it together for that reason. I just knew the reason, just to review this really quickly, is the reason I started this broadcast was I saw someone doing a really poor job in trying to do a weekly broadcast. And I said, wait a minute, I can do this. I can have people see me and I can help a lot of people out and I can show up. I can show up every Friday morning, and I have. I missed one Friday because of food poisoning, but it's been I did it the next day on a Saturday, 351 weeks in a row. And you know what? TGIF just kind of worked. Anyway, here we are.
I'm sure we'll get to this, but just knowing this about you and having the accountability to do this for that long without any interruptions and not missing anything, that consistency is something that we'll probably get to talking about, but that is what it takes to be successful in this business, in my opinion, at least.
I completely agree with that. I do a planning and prep session every Friday morning before this with agents from Align. And I was talking about that. And I talk about, discipline needs to be learned. And that discipline, after you learn the discipline, what discipline is, there's commitment, there's decision to make, which is decide to go, this is what you're going to do, and the consistency, which equals momentum, which is really important. But before we get all to that, I want to know a lot more about you. I want to know about you, your journey in life, your business, your profession, and how you got into being where you are today, top producing agent, director of sales at one of the top real estate teams in the country.
For sure. So I'll just give you a high level overview. I come from a corporate sales background. I started at a telematics company. For people that don't know what telematics are, we're selling GPS trackers for commercial fleet vehicles. That's where I started, and it was corporate America. You know, I had a sales job. I was, you know, very system oriented, had a CRM from the beginning of my career. So all these things kind of formed the person that I am today, learning the important things that I learned from that world, even though it wasn't a career path that I really envisioned for myself, nor did I like it. But it's what you make of the opportunity, right? So there was a lot of things that I learned from it, the good and the bad. A lot of the things that I apply to business today probably started there, right? There's a learning curve from everything that you learn from. And I saw something on Instagram not long ago. I want to touch on this really quick. From every loss that you have, there's a learning opportunities, right? So I don't remember exactly what it said, but it was like something along the lines: if you lose, you learn something, then you remove the L, and then you earn, right? Learn, remove the L, and then you earn. And that kind of stuck with me. So from every opportunity that you get, you're learning something that you're going to be applying towards, you know, your life, your business, whatever it is down the road. So that was my background, starting my career. And then in 2019, I met with Brett through a friend of mine that was doing some marketing work for the Sakura Group at the time. And, you know, for the people that know Brett, he's one of the most awesome people that I know.
Yeah.
So we had a conversation, we hit it off. I still had my other job. So, you know, I kind of shelved real estate for a couple of months. And just like we tell all the agents, stay on top of your leads, he never stopped following up with me. So after the second time he called me and we had a conversation, I was like, I think this is the right move. And, you know, here we are today. So that's kind of how my journey started with Align. But I had a lot of learnings that I had from my previous job that I was able to apply. A lot of principles, I would say, that are, I would say, even sales principles that can apply
Right.
to any industry, that I was able to apply to real estate that got me here today.
That's pretty that's a great way to look at Align and great way to talk about that. You had to, but you had to grow your business, right? So you took your experience in sales and you moved it over to real estate. How was that transition? Because there's a lot of people, Omar, that transition from a corporate world of maybe sales and maybe not sales. I mean, we have several examples of that in Align now, where people are transitioning into this as a new career.
For
Some
sure.
are doing it cold turkey, some are transitioning, right? As you did a little bit. Talk to me about how that transition worked for you.
To be honest with you, for me, it was pretty easy because in any sales job, I don't care what you're selling. I don't care what you're doing on that end of things. You're building relationships. So I knew my first principle was that I had to build relationship, whether it was building relationships with my sphere of influence, or whether it was building relationships with someone that I've never met before. The process was the same. I still had to build that relationship. And what I think is super important in the, at least for the real estate world, and can apply for any other career paths that you have, is you have to be available for the consumer to ask their questions. If you're that, you know, um, access point for them, that's going to help them transact in the biggest transaction of their life. For most people, at least it is. You know, buying or selling a home is one of the biggest transactions that you're involved in. So you have to make yourself available to those clients that you have. And those two principles really got me to where I am today. And now, being in the role of being director of sales at Align, my clients are the agents. So I try to make myself as much uh, uh, as available as I possibly can to them, right? So like now it's just like a shift in the principles that I apply to my clients. Now the agents are my clients. So I try to do the same exact thing that I did with the transactional world to the agents. So that's kind of, the mindset behind it.
You're still a high producing agent and you're director of sales. How do you juggle that in your life? Is it a percentage? Is it non-negotiable times? What is that, Omar?
My calendar is non-negotiable. That's how everything flows in my life. If it's not in my calendar, it doesn't exist. So I'm very systemized, as you can tell by now. Use a CRM for everything, whether it's an appointment that I have with a client or whether it's an appointment that I have with an agent. Any appointment that I get is time on task. That's going in my calendar. Because if you reached out to me, Dave, and let's use an example. Hey, do you want to come on the broadcast, right? I was able to give you an answer right away because I simply just pulled out my calendar and I was able to tell
Right.
you, yes, I'm free at that time, or no, I'm not free at that time. So, and that goes a very long way. And that's something, over time I've gotten better with. And I'd say probably in the last 2 years specifically, that's something that I'll never steer away from moving forward. But it can take some time to get used to, but the calendar's super powerful. And I know you geek out on that stuff. So we can talk
Yeah.
about that a little more.
I want to tell you that when we started talking about this a couple of months ago, and you said, "Look, I'm going to be tied up these months. Let's try it for March or whatever." And then I listened to that because I my goal when I set these broadcasts up is I plan it out. Right, there will be times where I might have stopped doing it because I got busy with other stuff, and I have openings for the next 2 months.
Right.
Now the way I do it is I've got it scheduled out for another 4 weeks. Who's coming on? And you'll see that at the end of broadcast, we have set up Karen Carr coming for next week, right? So what you were able to do for me saved me a lot of angst because I talked to a lot of people that say, well, talk to my assistant or let me check my schedule. And then I've got to, I'm good at being persistent to get the information I want for the broadcast,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
So you were able to give it to me right away, which was really helpful because I didn't have to guess. I asked you, you said yes. It was a matter of minutes,
Right.
right?
And that's
And
really all that it needs to take because, we all have cell phones, right? Everything really integrates to your cell phone. So there's not an excuse for me to give someone, say, hey, I don't know what my schedule is. Let me get back to you in 15 minutes. Well, guess what? Between now and the next 15 minutes, there could be 3 other things happening and I'm just going to forget. That happens sometimes too, but how hard is it to ask Siri to remember something,
yeah, and I, for me, sometimes my issue is I'm not really as good on the phone as I am on my computer, and I think that just because I didn't grow up with it, like you may have grown up with it more than I have. I am a couple of years older than you, just a couple. But the thing is that getting used to a system is just so important, and it makes our lives so much easier because a lot of people say, well, this is a pain in the ass. And my wife was saying to me this morning, she had trouble with rebooting something on her computer. And I said, I've had the same problems and I don't know how I figured it out, but I did. So let's figure it out later. And when you take that approach of you can figure it out, it's just like life, man. You know, you go through life, and honestly, we all are capable of figuring it out.
For
And
sure.
that's what I would say to people. In my session earlier today, we talked about just that, your schedule and knowing what's going on and what's non-negotiable. I believe that your schedule should be non-negotiable to the point of at least your prospecting, right?
Absolutely.
So, so,
Absolutely.
so, and one of the questions I got just to talk about prospecting and schedule, Omar, is there a better time to prospect than not?
Um, Not really. I mean, like you're asking for specific times of the day.
I get that question all the time, which is why I shared it with you.
Yeah. So for me, when, going back a little bit when I was a cold caller, and again, prospecting can be many different forms. It can be
Yes.
DMing people, it can be door knocking, it can be cold calling, it can be, calling on old leads. It's, all these things can be considered prospecting. It's not just cold calling people.
Right.
But talking specifically about when I was cold calling and I had a lot of success with it, I would have two different sessions. For me, I liked dialing between 11 to 1 p.m., 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then I took a small break and then I hit it hard again from 4 to 5:30, 6 p.m. And the reason why I like that 4 to 5:30 p.m. was mainly because I knew people were on their way home then. So if you're sitting in traffic, chances are you're going to pick up the phone. If I couldn't get you in the morning, I called you back in the afternoon and I was able to get you on the phone. Um, but honestly, it was just more so repetition and finding what times worked and what times didn't work. Oftentimes, sometimes in the winter, I, changed the times a little bit, moved it up, moved it down. It just, you gotta have to track those metrics, right? Like it's all comes back to data. What's working for you? If I made 200 calls today, Dave, on Mojo, and I connected with 10 people versus the last month. And let's say I did that from 10 to 12. And last month I called 200 people and connected with 20 people, but I did that from 9 to 11. I know my connection rate is higher from 9 to 11. So again, work smarter, not harder. I'm probably going to be pivoting and starting to hit those phone calls from 9 to 11 because of a higher hit rate that I'm tracking, right? But if you don't track these things and you're just dialing and hoping something happens, you're not really being intentional. So like, what's the goal, right? Like you want to be working smarter and getting those results and tracking those results. That way, if you look back at your business plan at the end of the year and you say, I want to double my business, you know exactly what you need to do.
So I want to get into CRMs and its importance. I also want to get into some of the data and talk to you about that. Not actually the data itself, but why it's important. But I want to talk to you about one of the words you just used, intentionality,
Yeah.
right? A lot of people get in this business for a lot of different reasons, right? And they don't think about how they have to be intentional about what they have to do. They look, there's a perception in this business that you can make as much money as you want. You can work the hours that you want. Yes, that is true. That is absolutely true. And I always said that means that 85% of the people in this business don't want to work and they don't want to make any money because that's basically what we see. I say that tongue in cheek, but also as you look at the national trends. So talk to me about intentionality, why it's so important. It doesn't have anything to do with discipline or commitment that we preached on a little bit.
I think it has to do with everything. It's like, if I always have the mindset of relating things to working out because I've never missed more than, let me just rephrase this. Ever since I turned 16 years old, I've never had a week pass by without going to the gym 5 times. That's my rule, right? And there's been times where I go on vacation or something like that, and I'll skip that. And you've probably heard me say this on many different
Yep, I
podcasts or
have.
whatever the case may be, right? That's my break. But what that does to me is I have an intention of having the healthiest version of myself. And the way I'm going to achieve that is by sticking to that schedule. And what I mean by that is if I'm sticking to that schedule of going to the gym every day, it trickles down to applying the same principles to your business, right? So if you're on schedule to go to the gym, say, I don't know, 7 a.m., you're done with the gym by 8:30 a.m., what are you doing for the rest of the day? Right? Like, so that intentionality of, okay, I'm getting the workout done first, starting on the right note, keep that going and follow through with your schedule. So get to the office by 9 a.m., make your calls till 11 a.m., do your follow-ups till 2 p.m., and deal doctor and showings after that, whatever it is that your
Right.
schedule leads up to. You have to have some sort of a system and intentionality of what your end goal is going to be, whether it's going to the gym or working your business. What's the end goal out of both of these, right? So that's something that you're going to have to get pretty crystal clear on to have, intentionality with the things that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I talked about that. I always talk about that in my planning and prep classes, sessions, simply because I mean, I mean, look, it's all about momentum and consistency. I love the phrase consistency is undefeated. And it really is. Because when you're consistent doing stuff, like you will, like you say, when you're away or whatever, sometimes you just won't work out. For me, and I was talking about this earlier. It's funny you bring that up. I was talking about this earlier, and so I said, what I used to do is when I would go away, I would not work out, right? And what that would do to me personally, and this won't happen for everybody, and I know it doesn't happen to you, but I come back and say, so it's harder for me to get going again, to get to the gym, right?
Yeah.
Getting up, that whole intentionality. But when I pull that through, like when I traveled to Europe last year, if I didn't have a gym to go to, I did hotel room workouts, which was a chair, push-ups, sit-ups, dips in a chair, whatever it was, whatever I could do, I had to do something every day to keep that going. And for me, the most important part, Omar, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, is that consistency leads to something else called momentum.
Right.
And it's really important that if you're going to prospect, you got to do it every day. Talk to me about the importance of that schedule, that in your schedule.
Yeah, it's again, it comes down to consistency. You can't expect results without being consistent in the activities that you're doing on a daily basis. You can't expect results to come right away. You're gonna have to. It's sometimes, I love the example of, let's use this for example. It doesn't really matter if you like them or hate them or love them. Talk some of the top athletes in my generation, at least, right? You've got Cristiano Ronaldo, I'm huge into soccer. You've got LeBron James and you've got Tom Brady. Their longevity is what separates them from the rest of the pack. But that longevity didn't just come like that to them. They had to be strict to their diet. They had to be strict to their schedule. They have to be strict to their training. They're always practicing. They're the first ones in, they're the last ones out. So, when you take control of the actions that you're doing from day to day,
right,
results are going to come. Like you're putting that effort in. I can guarantee you those results if you show up every single day and do the things that you said you're going to do, but you have to do them.
And absolutely. I mean, I always use Derek Jeter as my example when it comes to sports. His first year in pro ball, which is not the Yankees, but the first year in pro ball, he made 56 errors or 54 errors, whatever it was. It was in the 50s. He wanted to quit. His dad wouldn't let him quit. He said, you're going to keep doing this and you're going to keep practicing. So when we talk about practicing your craft, look, whether he was one of the top baseball players of all time, whether you think he was one of the greatest shortstops or not, it doesn't matter, but he was there. He's in the conversation, right?
He's a Hall of Fame player.
Right. And the question I have for anybody is, what did he do in the spring? He practiced. What did he do before the first game of the year? He practiced. What did he do before Game 7 of the World Series? He practiced. Never stopped. The practicing never stopped.
What did he do in the off season?
Exactly, right? So maybe he'd take a week off, but he'd always be working out, practicing on their skills. I mean, you look at people that are getting started in spring training. There used to be a problem. They don't want to show up early, but they're all showing up in January rather than February because they're getting started and really practicing to do better. So practice is a really important part of the consistency and everything. And it is not overrated at all.
And again, like in the environment that we're in, a lot of things are changing, right? So like that practice becomes a lot more important, whether you're practicing your scripts or you're practicing your listing presentation, your buyer consultation, whatever it is that you're practicing, just have an open mind to always pivot and learn new skills, because what it boils down to is, what value am I bringing to you as my client, right? We're in the real estate world. If I'm not bringing any, like if you're a buyer's agent, right, and you get a new lead, whether it's Sphere referral, whoever it is, if you're just going there to show them a property, you're just a door opener.
That's right. You're a doorman.
If you're not listening to their needs and what they're looking to accomplish and bringing value to their life, you're just any other agent. Like, how are you separating yourself from the pack? So you have to be always willing to learn, practice your script, keep top of the market trends of what's happening to your market, and bring your clients value. That's really what it always comes down to, is bringing value.
Right. And there's a good friend of mine down in Myrtle Beach by the name of Greg Harrelson. Some people may have heard of Greg. He's the broker owner of Century 21 Greg Harrelson Group, and he's a coach, national coach. And one of the things that he says is one of the reasons that agents are not as successful as they think they should be is practice, because they're not practiced, right?
Absolutely.
You know, and it really lends to being better at it. How important. I mean, look, you said it yourself. I don't have to repeat it. You said listing presentation, buyer consultation, which is much more important today than it was a year ago in most states,
For
right?
sure.
Having that buyer consultation, knowing what you're saying. And I believe also that the fear of picking up the phone has a lot to do with being comfortable with what you're saying. Would you agree with that?
100%. 100%. But if you're not going to pick up the phone, how are you going to learn?
Exactly right. But
Right.
but I believe a lot of people need to know what they're saying. That's, you know, they just got to practice and make it easier. So this way they're not worried about what am I going to say next?
Yeah.
What's the
Role
next? What's
play
the
it.
next script?
Role play it, practice
Right.
it,
Right.
write your scripts down. But I always tell agents, don't just read it word for word, internalize it. That way you can pivot and understand the conversation fully rather than just memorizing things, right? There's scripts for everything. You can, Chat GPT is awesome for a lot of these things nowadays when you run out of ideas, right? Like, use those to your advantage, but always be willing to pivot and change things that don't work for you. Just because it worked for Dave doesn't mean it's going to work for me. And
Right.
because it worked for me, it doesn't mean that it worked for Dave. When I first started in my real estate career, Danny Spitz, who's one of the GOAT prospectors, I would say, in the real estate world, I literally just asked him to sit on the Zoom with him while he was dialing, right? And I just listened to the stuff that he was saying on the phone, made a script out of it. Can I tell you that it was the same exact script that Danny uses every single time he prospects that I was using for the first 2 days, maybe, but then, there are certain things that didn't sound natural to the way I say things, and I had to pivot and change that to make it my own. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no
Right.
need to reinvent the wheel. You just make it your own and put that out to to practice and start using those in those daily conversations that you're having, whether it's prospecting, whether you're following up with your clients, whatever it is. That's just how it works.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to look, we've all been using the Mike Ferry scripts for years and years and years. They all still work. But here's the thing: we need to internalize them more. And to me, those scripts are either a way to get started or a way to fill in. You know, because if you work on those scripts, you understand what they say. I am not going to be one to say, well, you got to use this script and you got to use it word for word. Hell no. You got to make it comfortable for you, as you just said. So.
Yeah. And I think one important point on that too, when you're having conversations really with anyone, you want to make sure that you're actually listening to what that person is telling you.
Right.
That's
Right.
something that's like super important. Once people understand what that actually means and listening to what Dave is telling me, everything changes.
Right. It's this conversation right here. You and I have a conversation earlier this week or last week, and we talked about some of the key points we wanted to make today. And you've seen me hold a book in front of my hand, and these are the notes from our conversation the other day. Honestly, I just look at them real quick to make sure that we're flowing and stuff. And I have nothing planned. I don't have questions written down. I have nothing. I want to listen to what you have to say. And I know what's important to me. And one of the things I like to do in this broadcast, and I say it all the time, is what do I need help with to help the people I'm helping, right?
For sure.
And I have an expert like you on the broadcast to help me with just that. And I'm going to get as much information from you as possible. I know I can get it anytime. And that's the great thing about the organizations we're a part of, is we're able to get the answers to anything we need. But now I've got this, and I can use this to help other agents. I want to get into one of the things that is really important to all of us, and it's something you wanted to make sure that we talk about, is the value of a CRM. And before you go into that, I want to say that over the years, CRM was always something that, well, what's the best one to use? And as time went on, the answer was the one you will use. There are great CRMs out there. There are great CRMs that do a lot of work for you and take a lot of stuff off your shoulders. We happen to use a great one. I want you to talk to me about the importance of a CRM, just from anything you want to say, nuts and bolts. What's the importance of a CRM? Why is it important for people to use it? And what's your suggestions on its value?
I couldn't agree with you more. The best CRM is the CRM that you're going to use. That's plain and simple what it really boils down to. So the way I view a CRM is obviously it's a relationship management tool that you're using, but it systemizes the way you operate and how you do business. Again, my brain just fires on a lot of data points. So for me, if I can't track something as simple as my average phone calls that it takes me to convert a lead to a transaction, that's a problem to me, because I need to know what my conversion rate is, but more importantly, how did I get to that conversion, right? And the CRM helps me analyzes those things and have some metrics and some measurables on those things. Without them, it's just, you're shooting shit at the wall and you just hope that it sticks, right?
Yeah.
So but with the world today, with a lot of the tools that it has, now it's giving me AI summaries of my phone conversations.
Yeah.
It's giving me suggested tasks. It automatically sends you a text reminder and an email reminder so you don't miss the appointment that I have set with you. Is that something important to you? It's important to me, because if I have an appointment with you and I'm giving you an hour of my day, which is probably more than an hour in the real estate world, if you have to go meet someone, I want to make sure that that's the best use of my time and your time. Because if you're just going to blow that appointment, I just wasted 2 hours of my day that I could have been doing 10 other things. So the CRM, in a sense, helps you be a lot more protective of your time as well, and value your time a lot more. So Brett says this all the time, with prospecting, using Mojo or CRM or whatever it is, if you track those metrics, you can literally figure out what your hourly pay is in a 1099 business, which is what real estate is.
Yep.
You just pour gasoline on it. It really can be that simple.
So what's really interesting that you say that is I want to ask you what those metrics are, but I'll just go through them really quickly. I was recently at a conference out in Salt Lake City, and we had Preston Guyton and Travis Halverson from Digital Maverick come on, and they actually did live calls on a stage, which was really cool. But they talked about the breakdown, Omar, of not only what the metrics are, but the value of the metrics. Like, for instance, let me ask you this question, and I'll further that in a minute. What are the metrics? What are these things that you need to know? I mean, you use the word metrics and indicators. This phrase KPIs, key performance indicators, we hear that all the time. What exactly are they?
I mean, I want to track how many calls I made this week or today or this month or this year. I want to track how many appointments I went on. I want to track how many contracts I put out. I want to track how many contracts I got accepted. I want to see how many listing appointments I went on. I want to see how many listing appointments that I got signed. I want to see how many listing appointments that closed. You can go on and on and on and on forever, but that's really the beauty of having a CRM is, I kind of touched on this before. At the end of the year, when I go to write my business plan for 2026, guess what I'm doing? I'm going to pull all those data points, and I'm going to sit down, and there's going to be zero guesswork, because I know all my numbers. And I'm not just talking about myself. Any agent that's using a CRM can do the same exact thing.
Yeah, and I want to be really make a bold statement is if you're not tracking your numbers, you don't have a business, right? Here's the interesting part of what I've done before, and they actually put it on the screen this week, was the value of those dials. Like for instance, right? I'll just use numbers. Like if you did X amount of business, that all translate all the way back to how many appointments how many listings you took, how many listing appointments you had, how many listing appointments you made. You bring it all back to the number of dials, and you can say that every dial you made probably was worth $12
That's
if you
literally
take
what,
that
yeah,
all,
that's what I was
right?
referring- absolutely.
So I mean, it's just amazing the way you look at it. If you look at it that way, it actually makes it easier to do that work,
Well,
right?
because that work turns then to income producing activity.
That's right.
And you
That's
can
right.
put a dollar sign next to it. And
Right. And
that's when everything changes. When, whether you're a solo agent, whether you're on a team, doesn't really matter. You're still running your own business. And when you're able to track that, you're going to be able to figure out what you want to take home and how you're going to get to that take home number.
I think one of the fun things we use Follow Up Boss, and one of the fun things about Follow Up Boss is that to me, when I'm into making calls and stuff, it's almost like gamification. It's almost like a game. Like you make the calls, you go through it, and then after an hour, what I'll do is I'm going to go to my scoreboard to
For
see
sure.
how many dials I made, how many people I talked to. And the thing is, sometimes I'll argue with the system, like, how come you think say I only had 3 conversations? I had 4. But it's the way and how many minutes or how much time you're on there that it considers a conversation. And that also makes it a little bit more challenging for me if you're nuts about this stuff as we are. It makes it a lot more. It makes it a little bit more
It,
fun
game,
because okay, it's challenging.
it gamifies everything. And the fun that I see in all of this too, even for the agents that are trying to grow their businesses or newer agents coming into this business, the best advice that I can give is surround yourself with those agents that are doing it at a much higher level. And the CRM helps you be alongside with them, because if you see agent X is consistently on top of the leaderboard and they're consistently getting transactions done, you know what activities they're doing and you know what you need to do in order to get to that production level. Now, that doesn't mean your entire skill set is the same as that agent, but
Right.
that's not hard to develop with practice, with repetition. And what you're doing here is you're really just giving yourself the most at bats that you can possibly get to knock out those home runs.
One of the things that I can tell you about this broadcast, Omar, is that I know that most of the lower producing agents really aren't going to watch this, right? And I wish they would because they'd see a lot of different things. But I know that a lot of higher producing agents will watch this. So when we're talking about our CRM and we're talking about our key performance indicators, the metrics, et cetera, and all the data that's there, you get an agent that wants to grow. What are those KPIs that they need to look at? And what would you look at? You're the director of sales. So let's talk about, someone comes into you, let's say they're doing 5 million, they want to grow to 20 million, right? They really want to go far. What will you be looking at as far as those numbers are concerned, or is it not that an exact science?
I mean, it can be very simple. You can track your conversations, because obviously you want to be tracking how many two-way conversations you're having from, say you're making 100 dials, how many two-way conversations did you get into? How many appointments did you get from those 10 conversations? How many of those appointments did you knock out of the park and get an agreement signed, whether you're a buyer and a seller? And how many of those got to the closing? That's just the simple way of doing it. Now you can obviously drill down and take a look a lot deeper into each category. For example, if you want to take a look at conversion in from a listing presentation, right? You can start looking at, okay, well, what went wrong in that presentation that I can fine tune? And the one advice that I can give everyone is ask those people that you didn't earn the business from what you could have done better.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of
There's nothing wrong with asking that question and getting feedback on what you could have done better. because the goal is to get better every single time you sit at that presentation or you make that phone call, right? Or
I
you negotiate that transaction.
absolutely, absolutely. What could you have done better? Not what you did wrong, but what you could have done better. It's not a matter, and you said it before. If you don't win, you learn, right? It's not nothing to do with losing. Everything's a learning experience, and that's the way I look at everything, and still have, and still will. A lot of agents at a certain level, when they can't grow or they're not doing any more business, or basically, in this, we're in a difficult market. This broadcast is being broadcast on March 21st, 2025. And we're in a little bit of a difficult market, one might say. But I don't think the market has anything to do with the amount of business you do. And then everybody's going to say, "What, Dave, you're out of your mind." It doesn't. It's a matter of the effort and everything you put in. If someone says to you, "Omar, I need more leads," would you agree with that it might be a lead issue?
No, I would say it's how many conversations are you having with the leads that you currently have?
Right.
And
Right.
it doesn't matter. There's like this misconception that a lead is, something that I generated online. You can go and generate leads from the person that you talk to at the bar when you go out to the bar tonight. You can go get a lead from someone that you know that knows you, trusts you, and wants to do business with you, but they're just not there yet. They can refer you someone. That's a lead. A lead is just someone that's raising their hand and saying, I'm going to transact in real estate.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's our job to go and uncover that and bring enough value to that lead for them to work with you.
So, Omar, you're getting into this business. You've been in, whatever you've been in. There's two types of people getting in this business: people that are transitioning from another job, and people that are brand new getting into it. We're seeing a lot of younger people get into this business that I saw over the years. Right? I think we have several people, under 21 that have just recently joined the line. And it's really pretty interesting. What would you say to them would be several things that they need to do in order to transact as fast as possible?
Tap into your sphere sooner rather than later.
Okay.
That was one takeaway that I can give anyone as advice from my own mistakes is I didn't do that fast enough. And looking back, I could have probably doubled or even maybe tripled my business back then if I had tapped into that more.
Is it what you say to your sphere when you're first starting out? Because people are kind of sketchy and kind of scared of doing that. What would you, I mean, how did it work for you? What would you say to them? I mean, because that's people say, I'd rather call a FISBO somebody I don't know than somebody I do know.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. And I would say, honestly, it comes down to how much time you're spending in educating yourself. That's really what it boils down to. If you're spending enough time to educate yourself in what's going on in your market, in the real estate world, and being able to have a meaningful conversation when someone asks you, how's the market? That's half the
Yeah.
battle. How many times have you gotten it? You go to a
All
party,
the time.
there's probably 3 or 4 other agents in the same room.
Exactly, exactly. We were
But
talking about this. We were talking about this the other day. The same exact thing. It's like it's not a matter. And correct me if I'm wrong. What you're saying is it's not a matter of you have to talk to the people you know. It's a matter of being prepared to talk about the subject matter that you really want to talk about, and not pushing yourself on anybody. But if they say, "Oh, you just got into real estate, great. How's the market?"
right. But it's
I
the
mean,
same, it's the same principle in any industry. We're talking about real estate. It can apply to anything that you do in life.
right,
If you're
right,
educated enough on that subject matter, you can talk about it intelligently, and people are going to automatically be drawn to you because you know what you're talking about,
right.
right? So it really is that simple, but a lot of times it gets complicated for whatever reason, and that I get it. It's human nature, right? Like no one
Yeah,
wants to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, Aunt Sherry, I wanna earn your business," right? Like no one wants to really have those conversations and those dialogues. But if you get skilled enough with keeping up to the matters that are happening in the real estate world, for this example specifically, when someone asks you questions or the topic gets brought up, or people will say, how are you doing, how's work going, blah blah blah, you're able to have a meaningful conversation around it, and that naturally just draws people to you.
Yeah, it. So we use the phrase knowing the market. How about knowing your product? So I just going to use an example of
Yeah.
pharmaceutical sales. If you go into a doctor's office and you have this new drug or whatever, you're going to be selling them different things, and they ask you, "Well, how does that work?" and you don't have the answer. That's not a good thing, right? I have several friends that have been in pharmaceutical sales throughout their entire careers, and they had to know everything that drug or whatever it was, whatever it did. It's the same thing with real estate. If you don't know what's going on in your market, how do you expect anyone to trust you with what you know? Why would they work with you?
That actually brings up a good thought too. Going back on the comment that I made earlier, by surrounding yourself with people that are doing it at a higher level, use those people as examples to paint the picture for the people that you're looking to work with, the leads that you're working with, the sphere that you're working with, the listing that you have, the whatever clients that you have. If you surround yourself by those people that are doing it at a very high level, you're going to be able to speak on these things because you have real life examples of how those people handle those situations. And a lot of this stuff is not anything new. It's just different scenarios, and you just have to be listening to what the issues are that you're looking to solve. And if you surround yourself by those people, the solution is out there. You just have to be attentive to it and figure out how they solve that problem. And we're in the business of solving the pain point of
Right.
moving from not owning a house to owning a house, or owning a house to another house, upsizing, downsizing, whatever it is. How are you solving that problem for the consumer?
Right. Look, we all know that when you surround yourself with the right people, you're going to learn a lot more. You're going to be better at what you do, and you're always going to achieve more. It's the same thing in this business. I'm going to say to agents, look, if you've got a place to go to hang out with other agents, do it. If you don't find a way to do it, whether it's Zoom or whatever, but if you're going to hang out with people, you're going to have real estate conversations, and you're going to learn from others how they do stuff.
For
And
sure.
that's really important. I mean, be involved with others. Would you agree with that?
100%, wholeheartedly.
Well, man, there's a lot of things we've talked about today. I mean, a CRM is something that's completely and totally a thing I think every agent needs to rely on today more than ever. And believe it or not, I believe that the majority of agents in this business do not. If you want to use spreadsheets and that's the way you're going to do it, Excel spreadsheets, great, good for you. If that works for you, that's fine. I talked about schedule with agents today. I said, look, if you're more comfortable doing it on paper, that's great, but just make sure you stick to it. It doesn't have to be completely digital on the computer, on your phone, and whatever it is. Look, I admit I have trouble looking at my schedule on my phone, but I don't have a trouble looking at it on my laptop, right?
Right.
So
right.
the point I'm making is you got to use what works for you, but having a customer relationship manager or CRM is so very important, and use what it gives you. If you're paying for it, it's all there. Ask the questions. Hey, man, I want to thank you so much for being on today. I mean, this was a great broadcast. It was fun. I learned a lot. And is there anything else that you want to finish with that maybe we didn't approach or didn't talk about that you want to share with us, and how you can help agents more?
I just want to thank you for the time and the opportunity to be on this great podcast, and or broadcast rather. And yeah, I would say that the advice that I can give to any agent, whether they're new, experienced agent, high producer, last point we touched on, the CRM, just start using it. Give it a chance. And I will venture to say, if you go all out on it and give it that chance, you'll never turn the page back.
Omar, we have your Instagram and your contact information on the screen right now. Anybody wants to talk to Omar about growing your business, or anything to do with how he works and what he does and how he works with Align, feel free to take this information off the screen and contact him. I got two more things for you, Omar. One's a question and one's a point. How do I help you grow your business?
Sorry, you broke up a second.
How do I help you grow your business?
I would say that's a good question. It's something that's like super simple that I try to do with a lot of the agents that we have out of line is simply by, it doesn't really take any time or effort to share someone's content on social media. That's all that I ask from anyone. If I'm sharing something, if you can just share and reach one more person that's going to get value of it, that goes a very long way.
That is a great thing. I love that. And you know what? We end every broadcast the same way, man, with that question and the blue hat. And this is coming to you. See, I know you heard about it. I know you've seen that. Anyway, hey, man, I want to thank you so much for being on. Next week. What's that?
I said thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Next week, we have Karen Carr coming on. Karen is the founder of Video Boss Agent. She started a number of years ago when she moved to someplace she didn't know anybody. She started doing videos on YouTube. She is amazing. She's fantastic. It'll be her third time on this broadcast. I'm really looking forward to seeing Karen next week. Omar, thank you so much for being on. Just hang out for 1 minute as we finish out. Nelson, hit the videotape.